Recyclico, making lithium-ion last forever. Recyclico's patented recycling process achieves up to 100% recovery of battery metals from lithium-ion batteries for electric vehicles, including cobalt, lithium, nickel, manganese, and aluminum. Recyclico Battery Materials Incorporated trades on the TSX Venture AMY, on the OTCQB AMYZF, and Frankfurt ID4. For more information, visit recyclico.com or phone us at 778-574-4444. Recyclico, making lithium-ion last forever.
You're listening to HowStreet.com radio, available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. Welcome to HowStreet.com radio, the online source for market opinions. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. He's speaking to us from Arizona. Welcome back to the show, Mark.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Mark, do we have a special offer for listeners?
Yeah, let's use the 2022 half off, 2022 HALFOFF, and they give you 50% off when you go to VRTrader.com. And I also want to disclose that I'm not a financial advisor, nor do I provide financial advice, but we do have our newsletters, and that promo code will get you a 50% discount at VRTrader.
And Mark, perhaps a little bit of a disclaimer here?
Yes. As I stated, I'm not a financial advisor, nor do I provide financial advice. I'm just a newsletter publisher.
The stock markets were in negative territory today. I don't know if they finished that way because I've been busy doing interviews, but what's behind the kind of negative thing that's happening to the markets right now?
Well, I'm going to refer more to the cyclical picture, because everybody was pretty optimistic about stocks here recent weeks, as you know, with some of the big name, the Magnificent Seven names, like Facebook, Meta, and Nvidia, and Tesla, and so forth and so on. But from a cyclical point of view, we were due for I think some type of trading top here in early July. One of the things that I was keying in on was, by coincidence or design, we had the full moon on July 3rd, and I was writing about that for about 2 weeks prior to that. I said, you rally into that point, that could change direction of the market. It could be a catalyst or a coincidence, however you want to view it, but it was a bullseye. And we did top out right on that little full moon, and we had a little sell-off here. And then, I put together a lot of other cyclical analysis as well, and, most of my stuff is saying, watch out here, into the fall. We have the presidential cycle low potentially due there. Traditionally you do get some weakness in the September, October. Doesn't mean the market's going to go straight down from here, but it said, we had a hell of a run. Everybody's pretty bullish. Even though the Fed continues to raise rates and threaten to raise rates, they pretty much ignored it. But there's so many other things going on in the world. You just mentioned to me off air, solar flares. I mean, you had an outage in Canada. I post notice about that on my website just about every day. Stuff that's going on the geocosmic level. We have, the Tonga volcano probably responsible for heating up the oceans, which led to the El Nino effect and fires in Canada, and on and on and on. We have so many just interesting things going on. There's a story that, the Earth's temperature, average temperature, is the highest on record. Of course, records haven't been kept, for millions of years. It's only, last, 40, 50 years of keeping records, but, there's just stuff going on out there, and, if you forget the political, and you forget the Federal Reserve, just look at what's going on the planet. So, it's interesting times, and these things affect markets, and, I don't want to say that we're going into a bear market now. I mean, we may or may not, but right now you got to be a little cautious.
Well, Mark, as you say, there's always money to be made. What about investing in comfortable breathing equipment? you had 40 million Americans under an air quality advisory because of forest fires in Canada. Maybe it'd be nice to have a face mask that could filter out all those little wood particles.
Yeah, I wish I had a stock for you that manufactures those. But will people wear it? Many just were wearing face masks and so forth. But the implications of Mother Nature are real, and we're seeing an example of it. Also, talking about increased number of sharks and shark attacks on the East Coast of the U.S. I don't know what it is on the West Coast. I haven't heard too many West Coast reports, but claiming that the warming of the oceans has something to do with that. So just what can I say? The technical picture of the market is extended. We've had a nice run, which confused many analysts, myself included. The news environment, higher interest rates. Why is that bullish for stocks? And it isn't. One argument is, a lot of people have become extremely cautious for reasonable, on a reasonable basis, and have put money away in treasury bills and low risk or no risk investments, and all this money is sitting on the sidelines. Yet the market has gone higher. Now, I'm not claiming that I have inside information of what the governments are doing or not, but I believe a lot of the rally in the market was related to the plunge protection team. The government is in the markets manipulating stocks. The Japanese have been doing this forever. We have the Federal Reserve. We got the U.S. Treasury. We do have the plunge protection team created by the Ronald Reagan executive order back in 1988. And, there's a lot of shenanigans, let's put it this way, to say at the least, in the government sphere. So, a lot of that could be related to that as well. But getting back to my point about a lot of people holding treasuries, well, if suddenly all these people that are happy getting 4 or 5% at no risk decide they want to get into the market, there's a ton of money that could come in at some point and drive prices even higher, I suppose, particularly if rates start to come down in the near term. A lot of people are expecting that, thinking the Fed's going to be done with what they're doing in the next, few months, and rates are going to come down, which, I don't necessarily agree to or disagree to, but, that could be an impetus for, further rally. And then you've got, political consideration. You've got a U.S. election next year. Are you going to say that there's not going to be some shenanigans with regard to stock prices and what the Federal Reserve does or doesn't do at that time? So, you could build a bull case into the election, too, next year. So, whether those investors come in with that money parked in treasuries or not, it's interesting times. A lot of manipulative forces are out there, and so we're just going to swing with the action, so to speak. The action right now says a lot of individual stocks are certainly always tradable, but this is a good time of year. The summer could be choppy, and it could be a little bit of a downward bias into the fall, and we'll take it from there.
We'll have more with Mark Leibovit right after this.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Mark Leibovit. Mark, what's going on with crude?
Well, it's trading sort of sideways here. It's quiet. I do a lot of technical work on it, and it's pretty much trapped in this technical trading range. One key average that I use is this 150-day moving average, and until it really takes that out on a technical basis, again, looking at the charts, I don't think we're going to accelerate to the upside anytime soon. Let's see if it breaks out. This is a time of year where we, normally could see that market change direction. Summer demand for, gasoline and fuel and energy and so forth is the excuse, but the technical picture is just chopping along here sideways. Now, I have a personal bias. I think on a long-term basis, crude's going extremely high, much higher. As I mentioned in previous, broadcast, I could see $200 a barrel, the next few years. So, a lot of reasons to be positive on it. And this excludes, geopolitical war or any other variables that certainly exist out there. Iran's been trying to hijack, oil ships. There's a lot of, funny things happening, that could change the picture. You've got OPEC trying to, reduce productions and jack up prices. You got the Russian influence, the Chinese influence. But at the moment, I'm a bull. It just as on a trading basis, I can't say this is the moment that it's going to take off. But we do own a couple oil-related stocks. As you know, I've been partial to Occidental Petroleum, OXY, because Warren Buffett is about 25% of the stock, and he's a pretty good stock picker. So that's a good oil stock to hold, I believe, because of his analysis. And ultimately, if he's right, and if crude oil does take off big, a stock like that could do really well. So I'm a bull. Right now it's trading sideways. This could change in 2 days, and we could suddenly get a reversal. It hasn't happened yet, but I think it's coming.
Anything going on with the battery metals?
Well, lithium has been okay. It's sort of had a big run, before now, and it's been sort of trading sideways, not to down, but it hasn't really taken off again. Of course, some of the individual stocks, like Tesla and Rivian, have done well. A lot of the motor companies are obviously getting more involved in it. The metal itself has discounted, I think, a lot of the demand out there, and some of the demand really isn't real, because Rivian and Tesla are making, Tesla's been discounting prices on their vehicles, but because the vehicles are there, it doesn't mean the average person out there is going to rush out and buy an electric vehicle or can afford it, or whether it meets their lifestyle. For myself, I don't particularly care for the electric vehicle because it limits my ability to travel. A hybrid vehicle, which combines both fuel, gasoline, and charging, makes more sense. I think for the lifestyle, at least my lifestyle, and I think for others as well. So there are some limitations on the public out there just grabbing up everything that's going into production or planning to go into production. So. Well, what else I can say? There's a couple stocks that look interesting, but they've already had pretty much of a run up to this point. Many sold off considerably and now are starting to come back to life. I mentioned Rivian, RIVN, just one that we had traded in our newsletter. It's coming off a little trading bottom, but like I say, is the public really out there grabbing these things up? Does it make sense for them financially? What about the power grid, the ability to fuel the EVs? If everybody goes out there and has them, you want to wait in long lines to charge your car. Will there be enough power to charge your car? There's a lot of variables out there with it. So we're talking a multi-decade transition, and we'll see how it all unfolds. I think it all makes sense if you have the energy grid powerful enough to support it, and then you get down to the decision of how you're going to create that energy grid. Where is the energy coming from? If you've got, countries like Germany and cutting back on nuclear fuel, at some point there's going to be a shortage of the fuel to generate the electricity to power these vehicles. So a lot of interesting stuff going on out there. Anyway, I'm not going to change anything. You're not going to change anything. The politicians seem to believe this is the answer. I think they're stumbling over themselves a little bit because of the reality of power, the power grid, and so forth. So we'll see how it all plays out. I hope I'm covering your answer here. We just look at the stocks. They look good. Trade them and take it from there.
Anything happening on the commodity front, things like coffee or cocoa?
Yeah, they had a nice run. Some are doing better than others. A lot are tied to U.S. dollar because of the inverse relationship between the prices of the commodities and the dollar itself. But yeah, we got weather issues, crop issues, all kinds of Again, this is geocosmic type stuff. I think over time, we get the volcano activity. I think, as I mentioned in a previous broadcast, I think there's like 44 active volcanoes on the planet right now. The Tonga volcano recently heating the oceans. What's this going to do? It's going to drive commodity prices higher overall. World demand for food, restrictions, crazy restrictions like we want to get rid of the cows in the Netherlands, because supposedly they pollute the atmosphere. I mean, a lot of stupidity out there. So, a population of the world is growing, and the planet is not cooperating. Record heat, volcanoes, who knows, earthquakes, hurricanes, temperature of the planet going up. So this is fuel for higher commodity prices overall. So I'm a bull. We in our newsletter we cover the ETFs for the various key commodities, and we like them.
Any action in gold and silver?
Waiting for that, Jim. There's supposed to be some cycle coming in here. We track all these cycles, in July, August, supposedly. I don't do all the work on that. Our good friend, who you have on the air, Ross Clark, talks a lot about cycles this time of year in the gold market, and he's been, at least in the communication I've had with him and in his newsletter, in my own work, there are some gaps to be filled, upside gaps, technical jargon, where the metals had run up so much and they needed to pull back, and then perhaps after filling those technical trading gaps, you would set the stage for another advance. I've been waiting for those, and they seem to be getting closer and closer to that level, and that would make me a little bit more bullish. The fundamentals just make sense for them, with the exception of the theory, and I shouldn't say theory, but, the government intervention and manipulation and suppression of the metals, particularly gold, has been documented by GATA.org, GATA.org for decades. So that's a whole other variable with the governments in there, though there have been reports that governments are looking to accumulate gold and so forth, but those stories come and go. I think it's a bullish scenario overall. We have like a triple top in the charts in that 2060 to 2080 range in the gold market priced in U.S. dollars, and it's just a matter of time. If they keep knocking at the door up there, and at some point they're going to break through, and then you're going to see gold at 23, 2,500 or some higher levels. So, I don't know when that's going to happen. We hope it happens this year or next year, but watching the charts, we're looking to be a buyer on a pullback here, and certainly on a breakout above those that level that I mentioned in the high 2000s. Anything
going on the cryptocurrency front?
Well, it's been strong. Bitcoin has been strong. There was an interview, in fact, today, or maybe it was yesterday, on CNBC. Larry Fink, who's the founder, controller, CEO of BlackRock. They're behind getting an ETF approved by the SEC so that you could buy Bitcoin, and so far the SEC has been giving them a little trouble in getting that approved. And he made a statement on the air, and I think I heard it earlier today, unless it was a repeat of an interview from a day prior, essentially saying Bitcoin is a world currency, and it's here to stay, and we got to get an ETF to allow individual investors to participate versus going out there and dealing with the various platforms, which for many investors is complicated since it's sort of an unknown world for them. It's funny, though, there is a trust you could buy anyway, which we have in our newsletter at vrtrader.com. It's the Bitcoin Trust, ticker symbol GBTC, and that's been traded for several years, and that's one way to participate. It's not priced exactly like Bitcoin. It's sort of related to the movement of Bitcoin. So there's a way to participate already, but an ETF that Larry Fink at BlackRock's talking about, I guess, would be more a direct correlation, and we'll see if that gets approved. And if that gets approved, this is like going back to the days before we had ETF for gold. If you remember, for many years there was no ETF for gold, and then the World Gold Council got the GLD, ticker symbol GLD, approved as the ETF for gold, and that brought a lot of buyers into the gold market. It helped support the price of gold, and has had a partial bullish effect in driving it higher. So I presume that if BlackRock is successful and there's an ETF for the Bitcoin in addition to the one that already exists, which is more of a trust than an ETF, but that could be a bullish factor. You know how I stand. I think Bitcoin is going to 80,000 and some higher level in the next few years, and it's trading around 30,000 now, and it might go even much higher than that. So, government shenanigans, uncertainties on the planet, fear of your cash being in jeopardy in the banks, fear of currencies going down, government irresponsibility with debt, all and on are reasons why crypto came into existence. And if Larry is a pretty formidable guy, for him to make a statement like Bitcoin's here to stay. And I sort of felt that anyway, because even the SEC was telling us it was a commodity and they really weren't going to regulate it the way they're trying with some of these other cryptos. It makes sense to own some. So let's see if that ETF gets approved.
One of the fears I heard about governments going to digital currency is that it gives them the ability to tax every transaction you make. It's not just a sales tax, but if you went and bought $10 worth of plants from your neighbor, you have to pay tax on that.
Gee, I really didn't hear that detail. I know that if they force cash out of existence and have all your money in a bank account that's all digitized, they can obviously track all transactions everywhere because they obviously want to get rid of cash. That's been known for years. They don't like cash at all because transactions occur, the government has no oversee over and can't tax and so forth. But yeah, apparently it's coming. They're planning it and talking about it. I don't believe it could really happen the way the government wants it to happen. It's almost like going back to what FDR did with gold back in the 1930s, saying you got to turn all your gold in, folks, or you're going to go to jail. I mean, is that what they're going to do? They're going to say, have you got any cash out there? A lot of people have cash. I think it's always a good idea to have cash as an emergency. A lot of people like cash. There's going to be a black market for cash forever. They're not going to get everybody to turn in their cash, and certainly as U.S. dollars floating all over the world. And it's sort of a joke on one level, but there's certainly an attempt to do it, to track what you're doing. And I guess what you're saying regarding taxation, the fact they know everything is being tracked, it gives them more of a basis to tax you. I'm against it. I think you have freedom, whatever currency you want to use, whatever medium you want to use for transactions, and less government involvement, the better. Unfortunately, government has a different viewpoint, and we'll see how it all plays out. But I know they are working on a digital currency, and the main objective is control and supervision, and that seems to be the trend. So we'll see.
Well, we saw during the Truckers' Freedom Convoy in Ottawa how quick the government was to seize and freeze banking accounts so that even the people who were charged with offenses there couldn't pay their lawyers.
This is a good reason to keep cash around, I suppose, right? You know. So listen, I'm definitely against what the government's trying to accomplish. It's clearly a case of supervision and control of the populace. And I'm certainly, if I have any extra cash around, I'm not turning it in. So, of course, that could help the gold market and other physical assets. I guess if you're forced to turn in your cash, you don't want to, go buy gold, unless they make you turn your gold in too, or go buy physical assets like some of the commodities we're talking about, or Bitcoin, for example, or real estate. So it would drive, I think, money into the commodity markets as a hedge against government intervention. So I think if they really force you to get rid of all your cash, it could be inflationary for some of these other alternative investments. And we'll see how it all plays out. They may go up anyway for their other reasons, but we just were talking about Bitcoin a moment ago. That would certainly be fuel for Bitcoin, versus not having that government restriction.
Well, if making something illegal helps you, the war on drugs has made most drugs illegal, and yet there's a lot of drugs out there.
Right.
Yeah.
As I say, is a war on drugs stop drug activity? Is a war on cash going to prevent people from storing or using cash? Even when FDR created the edict on gold, a lot of gold was not turned in. A lot of gold was shipped overseas. Not everybody turned in their gold. The government could only do and say so much. So it'll be interesting how it all plays out. I think the bottom line is, the irresponsibility of government, the taxation of government is just driving people away from things that they have any control over. And I think, markets like gold and silver and real estate and Bitcoin and, soybeans and corn and, coffee and other places that, agricultural land has been another big hedge too. Farmland, look what China's been doing, trying to acquire farmland in North America. They've been successful to a certain degree. So farmland is another hedge. Something that's physical that the government can't force you to liquidate. So a lot of interesting times are coming, but certainly provides alternatives for investors. I think a portfolio of owning land and commodities and gold and crypto all makes sense. The stock market's not the only place for your money.
Mark, thank you so much for the update.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Mark Leibovit, editor and publisher of the Leibovit VR newsletters, also known as VRTrader.com. He was speaking to us from Arizona. If you have any questions for Mark or for any of our guests, you can send them to info@HowStreet.com. Our YouTube channel is Talk Digital Network. Find us on Twitter @HowStreet. We're also on Facebook. I'm Jim Goddard. Thank you for listening.
Comments made on HowStreet.com radio are an expression of opinion only and should not be construed in any matter whatsoever as recommendations to buy or sell any financial instrument at any time. Available online at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. HowStreet.com radio is a production of HowStreet Media Incorporated.